Hey, good morning. I'm really glad that y'all could join us. This is kind of a hot off the presses update on our 2019 home garden variety trial. And so we have been furiously analyzing data all weekend. So as we sit here on a Monday morning, we've got some fun stuff to share with you. The first thing really that I want to say about our home garden variety trial is just thank you. It's you all as participants who invest the time and energy to provide us with excellent, detailed evaluations. And so a huge thanks go out to you. This is really the example of the beauty of a team approach to trialing, right? So we have the traditional model. So this is what my trials look like in Knoxville. Lots of data rolling in that we carefully weigh and evaluate, but then layered on top of that work is all of what you guys do in your home garden and those great evaluations that give us a geographical range across the state. And we collect good data, high quality numbers. But one of the cool things for me about our home garden variety trial is that it also provides a personal perspective, right? So your comments, your evaluations, whether it be funny remarks about wildlife or personal notes about, you know, I cooked this for my kids and it's the first time they've ever liked a zucchini or something along those lines. It provides a human touch to these trials, which is one of the really cool things about citizen science. And so together, the data and the people make our home garden variety trials. As it's kind of a chronology of how these trials work. In the wintertime, you all have access to this beautifully designed catalog where you pick out the trials that you want to do. One of the great things about our program is that it's really been growing throughout the years, from our very first pilot year with just Master Gardeners in 2017 to this year when we had more than half of the counties in Tennessee represented, 168 participants and over 700 trials. So it really just shows your dedication and your interest in our program. And then of course we report and analyze, whether on paper or more recently, a lot more on digital. So we've been having the opportunity to take those data and then turn them into home garden variety trial reports. We're working on this right now, and this will be out as early in the new year as we can, with lots of ratings and statistical analysis that shows everything from preference to germination, health, attractiveness, and of course, flavor of our paired comparisons. And then at the end of that trial report, every year we just add to our list of top performers. So it's a quick couple-page sheet that you can go to and see what's performed well over the whole course of our trials in Tennessee. One of the neat things about data collection this year is that we've kind of expanded some of the questions to get a little bit more sense of how our trialers are growing, right? To know that 40% or a little bit more than 40% of folks are growing in either raised beds or containers. It means we need really space efficient crops, and how you're fertilizing, how you choose to manage the nutrition and the soil quality. All these things help us select crops, but also provide information that hopefully helps you in your home garden. The other new thing that we started collecting this year, and we of course hope to build on next year, is if something goes wrong in your trial, we don't want you to just, then not turn in the report. Please do go ahead and fill out the evaluation. It'll be much shorter, right? You only have to answer a few questions, but tell us if something went wrong and tell us what went wrong so we have a better sense of how these trials are going. So with that kind of 40,000 foot view and overview of our trials, I just want to jump in to a brief roundup of our trials and share with you what happened in 2019 and a few things about what we're planning for 2020. Our very first trial was our snap bean trial, and so we kind of did an old standard of Blue Lake 274 with Jade, which is a little bit newer cultivar that's performed very well in the 2018 trials. And you can see a couple of pretty well-matched cultivars that perform pretty similarly for our trialers. High percentage of gardeners who would recommend them, both for yield, and the same percentage of people would recommend them for flavor. That was Jade in the previous image. This right here is the Blue Lake bean. trial number 2 was a compact plant that produced filet beans. So this is Mascot that you're looking at, the plant. You can see compact, a lot of blooms at the top of the plant. And Mascot's an All-American Selections winner from 3 years ago, and it was trialed against Kalima, which I want to tell you was actually a suggestion from a trialer last year. They turned in their evaluation and they said, both of these beans were okay, but neither one of them were as good as Kalima. You should try that. And so we did. We absolutely want to take information from you and turn it around and use it again in our trials. So both Kalima and Mascot performed well. 4 out of 5 people who trialed them would recommend them to other gardeners in Tennessee. And Kalima especially, you can see high percentage of people who'd recommend for yield as well as for flavor. So this is Mascot. You can see a thin French filet bean that won't really fill out very well. And these are Kalima, a little bit longer bean that also did really well in our trials. We did a pole bean this year with kind of Kentucky Blue, which has a parentage of Kentucky Wonder. It performed pretty well. You can see over 4 out of 5 people would recommend that to others, and many of them, 2/3, would give that recommendation because of yield and for flavor. To provide something new and different in our trial this year, we also had a heritage pole bean. So these are some local Appalachian favorites. Turkey Crawl tended towards performing a little bit better than the Hill Family Greasy bean. You can see really attractive, a little bit larger seed. And so we kind of got a little bit of special Appalachian traits included in our trial this year. Okra has been one of our best performing trial crops, both in 2019 and in 2018 when we did it for the first time. Last year we did newer red cultivar Candlefire, which performed really well against an old standard, which Clemson Spineless, which absolutely held its own. This year we kind of reversed that trend and we did an heirloom red, Hill Country Red, with a newer F1 hybrid green, and jambalaya did very well. You can see this red right here indicates that that's significantly higher in our statistical evaluation. So 9 out of 10 people would recommend it, and it had significantly higher ratings for yield, high marks on flavor. So jambalaya did very well in our trial. This is Hill Country Red. Although it didn't beat out jambalaya, we did get good marks on kind of a short, squatty fruit, which was good for slicing and frying, but productivity, yield, a lot of good things to say about jambalaya, which you can see here. Sweet corn has been a trial that's been challenging for us, right? A lot of people grow in small spaces and we battle wildlife issues. So you can see we had about 8 completed trials that came back in the sweet corn area. These are 2 newer synergistic cultivars. Both temptress and sweetness did well. You can see the majority of trialers would recommend it, and both of them got pretty good ratings. For our first cucumber trial, it was a kind of a traditional slicer category. So we had Market More compared with Bristol. So an older open pollinated cultivar, a newer hybrid, and both of them performed well. Statistically speaking, that's pretty much a tie. But one of the new twists that we added in our trial this year was having a blind trial. So we had several people who were trialing trial number 7 and knew what those 2 cultivars were. And then we had an additional 12 to 14 people who trialed blind cucumbers, which, unbeknownst to them, were the same trials as were in number 7. So this cultivar 462 was Market More 76, and cultivar 295 was Bristol. So you can see that the rating trends were pretty similar. Both of them did well. They were highly recommended by gardeners, but we did have some nuances that kind of came out in that blind trial. Market More was rated a little bit higher for germination. So while the trends were similar, we did see some interesting things that came out of that blind trial. So we'll probably continue to do that in some fashion just to make sure that our data is robust and that, to the best of our ability, we're not being overly hindered by knowing the names of cultivars. For our space efficient or a compact cucumber, Space Master won out this year in the rating over bush crop. Really high percentage of people who would recommend it. and it did have higher ratings for health and for yield. For the first time this year, we did pickling cucumbers, which weren't grown by quite as many people as who grew the compact or the slicers, but we had Cool Customer over here on the left, and this is H19 Little Leaf. So Cool Customer did have a trend toward a higher rating and a higher percentage of people who would recommend it. You can see higher germination, so plant stand may have been something that came into play for a Cool Customer. Just so you know that they were being serious when they said Little Leaf. This is a close-up snapshot of H19 Little Leaf. So it did have some advantages with being able to see through the plant canopy and pick the cucumbers. As did the white cucumber that was trialed for the first time in a specialty cucumber category where we had some Asian cucumbers. So we had Tachi, which is a white fruit, and then Suyu Long, which is a more traditional green, of course, long fruit that has pretty big spines. So you can see, probably statistically speaking, those came out about similar, but we did get some good comments on flavor and for health for Atachi. And here's what those fruit look like side by side. So you can see a really interesting novel white fruit, which did show up well in the plant canopy, and a more traditional, longer Suyu Long. One of the most clear-cut trials this year was the muskmelon. And so what we had here was kind of an old standard golden cultivar, ambrosia, and then a newer hybrid, which probably has more attributes as a disease-resistant shipping muskmelon. And the results were clear. Our trialers really preferred the more aromatic, the softer flesh of the ambrosia melon, even though Trifecta had a beautiful dark orange flesh. It wasn't rated at quite as high as far as taste, flavor, texture. And so ambrosia, far and away, a runaway winner in the trial this year. Watermelons were not quite as clear cut. I think we had some germination issues with the sugar baby bush, which may have been part of the reason why they lagged a little bit here in the ratings. Baby doll was a yellow flesh fruit, kind of a smaller fruit, but one that did pretty well. 100% of our trialers would recommend it. Pumpkins, we had a favorite from the 2017 trial, Moonshine, which is a white pumpkin. It did well. 100% of trialers would recommend it. And then we also had Sunlight, which is a beautiful yellow fruit, kind of a small ornamental pumpkin. So you can see here, and still good rating, and a high percentage of people would recommend it. We had winter squash in our trial. So this is a small fruited butternut. And in this trial, we had butterscotch, which you can see in the background here, which is a newer All-American Selections winning F1 hybrid. Had nearly a 7 rating. 2/3 of people would recommend it. And then we had honey nut, which is a newer but an open pollinated cultivar. Really small fruited, right? So these are personal size, very, very small fruit, but honey nut has been bred for flavor. And so we did get some good notes on honey nut as terms of flavor. This is what that fruit looks like. At immature, it's green, and then it matures to kind of this toasty brown. So I do kind of like that as far as a maturity indicator. We did patty pans for the first time this year. So summer squash and sunburst did well in the ratings, but about 4 out of 5 people would recommend both of these. The heirloom Juane et Verte did get some notes. While it may not have always had as much yield as sunburst, it did have a few people who said great flavor for that heirloom. A couple kind of novel summer squash that we did were really small fruited types. And this is Desi there, the lighter color, and then lemon you can see as the small fruit in the front. Not quite as many people grew that. You can see our number of trialers is a little bit lower, but both of them have got pretty reasonable ratings with about 2/3 of people who would recommend them to others. Of course, one of the most highly trialed varieties every year is our green zucchini trial. This year, we actually had 2 parthenocarpic cultivars, which means that they'll set fruit without pollination, and it can be attractive for people growing in greenhouses, or for terms of home gardeners, people who are growing maybe under a screen to protect those plants from squash vine borers. So that can be some useful things. overall, people tended to like the appearance of a more traditional dark green zucchini, while 3 out of 4 people would recommend both of these. The Easy Pick Green, you can see there on the top, tended towards some higher ratings than Pantheon there on the bottom. Slight ridges, a little bit lighter color. So overall, it seems like folks in Tennessee tend to prefer more traditional zucchini. In the green, however, in the yellow, they really gave great ratings this year to yellow zucchini, which is the first time that we've trialed those. So both Golden Star and Easy Pick Gold, which Easy Pick Gold is also parthenocarpic, got very good ratings and a high percentage of people who would recommend them. In many ways, our yellow squash trial, number 19 here, was kind of the heavyweight battle of our trial this year. Zephyr, here on the left, was a great performer in 2017, and Tempest, right here in the middle of the picture, was a great performer in 2018. So, of course, we had to trial them against each other in 2019. And in many ways, they kind of battled to a draw. You can see great recommendation percentage for everyone, high ratings, so really not much statistical breakout here. Both of them continue to perform very well. I can say in my trials in Knoxville, long after the yellow and the green zucchini were done harvesting, I was still picking off of my Tempest and Zephyr, so a great long harvest season. The blind squash trial was new for us this year. We actually had an unreleased cultivar that was sent to us for trialing by you, Tennessee home gardeners, that hadn't even been released to the public yet. So that was Starry Night. It was listed as cultivar number 586, and it was trialed against a smaller, dark, solid green, All-American Selection winner, Honey Bear. And so statistically speaking, it was similar ratings. But Starry Night did get some good marks for yield, a little bit larger in fruit size, and also flavor, which was one of the reasons why it was bred. It didn't necessarily get great ratings for appearance, but I think that may have been partially due to the fact that people weren't necessarily prepared for the fact that it was going to be kind of mottled or multicolored. If they knew it was called Starry Night, they might have liked it better. Basil, really well received. We had over 20 people who turned in evaluations. It fits well in containers and raised beds, so it's really versatile for a lot of gardeners. And both of these cultivars performed well. Aroma 2, which is a little bit more of a commercial type production cultivar, good disease resistance. Dolce Fresco, which is an All-American Selections winner that fits well in pots, a little bit more compact plant. Both of them, high recommendations and strong rating. And then, of course, we had the flowers. This was our very first year to do flowers, and we had almost 40 people who were growing zinnia trials, and you can see N of 28, so almost 30 people who got full, complete evaluations back to us. This is Queen Lime Red, a newer All-American Selections winning zinnia. Statistically speaking, our zinnias were pretty close in the rating. Some people did seem to prefer Candy, which was a multicolored cultivar because it had a lot more variety. So you can see it tended toward having a little bit higher rating and recommendation percentage. But overall, the zinnias were well received. The sunflowers also, first time that we'd ever trialed those. And we did a pollenless, single stem kind of cut sunflower, more developed for a cut flower industry. And that was White Knight. And then it was trialed against Sonia, which is a regular pollen-producing, multi-stem, a little bit more like a garden sunflower. So overall, the ratings weren't quite as high as they were for zinnias. I think we had a few people who may have had some germination issues with some sunflowers, but we'll definitely continue flowers in the future because it's been something that really went over well for trials. As we bring this discussion to a close, I just want to share with you a few ideas that we have for 2020. We're thinking about in the neighborhood of 20, 21, 22 trials. We'll certainly have more beans, snap beans, filet beans, pole beans. Maybe we'll do some edible soybeans again this year. Cucumbers, absolutely, some traditional slicers, space efficient, and I think we might do some snackers, some smaller cucumbers, which are great for kids and, we big kids as well. And okra, some melons, probably a muskmelon and watermelon. We'll definitely do more zucchini, probably a yellow zucchini again. we may do the patty pan again and some crooknecks, a couple of winter squash, maybe a little bit larger butternuts this year, and maybe something fun as far as winter squash, like a North Georgia candy roaster, or maybe something that's a little bit older, heirlooms for some of those winter squash. We'd probably expand our herbs for next year, maybe do some chives or some lavender or something different. And we'll absolutely continue with flowers, whether it be cosmos or zinnias. That's been something that we do want to continue. And we'll definitely have a youth trial as well. So as we kind of conclude this presentation, once again, I mean, I just want to say thanks for everything that you guys have provided as far as your input, your pictures, your contributions to this trial. We absolutely couldn't do it without you. As we look towards 2020, we may come down off of the 26 or so trials that we did this year, have slightly fewer. We'll definitely have some kind of an unnamed or blind option to give us a different viewpoint on our data. We'll have something fun for the kids, whether it be colored beans or gourds, something novel and ornamental and fun. And I hope to also do some transplant trials that would be appropriate for our Master Gardener demo gardens. So maybe some tomatoes and peppers. And I really want this summer to have an summer evening or two to just invite folks out to the trial plots that I have here in Knoxville and share with you some fruit, right? And look at the plants, talk about disease resistance, and just really get to spend some time with the plants and with the trials. So that's really our summary that we have for you today. I really appreciate you joining in. And most importantly, I thank you for your great participation in 2019, and I look forward to a fabulous 2020.